Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Part 1, Vidur's Pilgrimage. We are going to read from Chapter 10, Divisions of the Creation. Maitreya recounts how after Vishnu instructed him, Brahma meditated for 100 celestial years. Then, guided by the Lord in his heart, he began to create. Maitreya also explains the nature of time, which is the Lord's form for controlling the material universe, the 10 stages of creation and the 3 types of annihilation. The mid-morning sun shone through the overhead branches, throwing dappled shadows across the ground. A pleasant breeze carried the fragrance of champa flowers through the clearing at Naimisharanya, where Sutta sat before 88,000 sages. Neither the chattering of the pink-faced monkeys in the surrounding trees, nor the incessant cries of birds distracted their attention as Sutta spoke. Shaunak was curious to know how Maitreya felt about Vidur's numerous questions. Verse 3, Sutta said, O wise son of Bhrigu, the great sage Maitreya was enlivened by Vidur's queries. Shaunak was the son of Bhrigu Muni. He kept them within his heart and replied to them one after the other. Some sages called out, Pray tell us what transpired next. Pleased with their enthusiasm, Sutta smiled. Listen as I continue to relate that conversation exactly as I heard it from my spiritual master, Shukadev Goswami. When Vidur opened his eyes, the first rays of dawn were brightening the skies. He looked around and saw the silhouette of Maitreya seated by the riverside. Vidur went down to the riverbank and seeing that Maitreya was in a yogic trance, he took his bath in the chilly waters, chanting sacred mantras. Emerging from the water, he performed yoga asanas as he waited for Maitreya to come out of trance. As the rising sun began to warm his body, Maitreya slowly regained external consciousness. Seeing Vidur nearby, he greeted him. The two friends collected wild nuts and edible roots, which, along with fresh figs, served as their breakfast. Seating themselves again by the fire, they resumed their conversation. Verses 1 and 2, Vidur said, Greatly learned one, please let me know how the grandfather of the planetary inhabitants, Brahma, created the living beings, bodies from his own body and mind after Vishnu disappeared from his vision. You are fully qualified in transcendental knowledge, therefore kindly eradicate my doubts by answering the questions I asked last night. Verses 3 to 6, inspired by Vidur's inquisitiveness, Maitreya took a few moments to recall Vidur's queries and then said, After Vishnu instructed him to perform penance prior to creating, Brahma meditated on the Lord for 100 celestial years. A fierce wind then began to blow, agitating the devastating waters which had accumulated in the Lord's navel. Great waves violently rocked the lotus where Brahma sat. Because of this long penance and acquired transcendental knowledge, Brahma was able to swallow both the wind and the water. Verse 7, When the peace again prevailed, Brahma clearly saw how the universal planets lay in seed form along the lotus stem. He considered how to recreate them as they were before destruction. Prompted by Vishnu in his heart, Brahma entered the lotus stem, which expanded throughout the universe. He divided it into 3 parts and then further divided these into 14 planetary systems. Verse 9, Maitreya concluded his explanation by describing Brahma's personal qualifications, the creation of the various planets suitable for different types of living beings, was assigned to Brahma because he is the most exalted personality in the universe. He surpasses all in his meditation and transcendental knowledge. Furthermore, he serves Krishna without material desire. Vishnu therefore entrusted him to create. Vidur knew already that Brahma only needed to create all 14 planetary systems on the first day of his life. At the beginning of each subsequent day, he only had to recreate the 7 lower planets called the Pataloks, the middle planets known as Bhurlok and Bhuvarlok, and the upper planets called the Swarloks. The highest Maharlok, Janalok, Tapolok and Brahmalok were not dissolved each day in the waters of devastation. So the highest planets, it's been told here, Maharlok, Janalok, Tapolok and Brahmalok, they are not dissolved each day in the waters of devastation. This was due to the devotional service their inhabitants rendered to the Lord. Verse 10, Vidur was, however, eager to learn more about the nature of eternal time, which Maitreya had earlier described as instrumental in creating the cosmos. He knew that time is the Lord's form by which he controls the universe and that it acts differently in different planets. Many false theories abounded regarding would give a clear and indisputable explanation. Vidur said, O greatly learned sage, I know that the Supreme Lord manifests countless forms with which to enact his wondrous pastimes. One of these is eternal time. Kindly describe its characteristics in detail. Verses 11 and 12, Maitreya said, Eternal time is the original impetus for the modes of nature to interact. Vidur knew that at the stage of Pradhan, the modes of nature were dormant. Then Mahavishnu glances at Pradhan and injects time in the living beings. Only then do the modes of nature begin to interact. He now understood that time acts as the catalyst for that process. Maitreya continued, Time is unchangeable and limitless. Vidur wondered how time was unchangeable. There were different calculations of time on different planets. A year of Brahma is very different to either a celestial or human year. Maitreya seemed to be saying that time is always the same, but it is experienced differently by different living beings. What though did he mean by saying time is unlimited? As Vidur pondered this question, an insight came to him. Time is described in terms of various divisions. For example, we speak about yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Maitreya was teaching him that from the perspective of absolute time, these divisions do not apply. Time has no beginning and no end, no yesterday, no tomorrow. It is a limitless and continuous reality. Maitreya continued, time is the Lord's instrument for enacting his pastime of creation. The entire material world is a manifestation of Krishna's impersonal feature known as Brahman. Part of the Brahman has been separated from the Lord by the means of time and transformed into material energy, or in other words, the 3 modes of material nature. These modes then interact to manifest objective material reality. As Vidur listened, he thought of a spider and its web. The web is the spider's energy, just as the objective universe is Krishna's energy. Since there is no difference between Krishna and his energy, the universe is also the Lord's form. Verses 13 and 14. Maitreya continued, Vidur, you should know that eternal time perpetually creates, maintains and dissolves the cosmos, as well as the initial creation which occurs naturally due to the interactions of the modes of nature. There are another 9 stages of creation. There are also 3 kinds of annihilation. The first is executed by time alone, which annihilates the universes. This occurs at the end of Brahma's life. The second occurs due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Ananta, lying at the bottom of each universal shell. That is the Ananta Shesh. This happens at the end of each Brahma's days. The third type of annihilation is that of the individual bodies, which is regulated by their own karmic reaction. So just to give you a quick recap, the first annihilation is executed by time alone, which annihilates the universes, all the universes. This occurs at the end of Brahma's life. The second annihilation occurs due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Ananta, lying at the bottom of each universal shell. That is, Balramji, Sankarshan, Ananta Shesh. This happens at the end of each of Brahma's days. The third type of annihilation is that of the individual bodies, which is regulated by their own karmic reactions. Vidur said, I'm interested to know more about the different stages of creation. Verse 15, Maitreya said, the first creation is the Mahat Tattva, the total material ingredients. This occurs when Krishna glances at Pradhan, thereby agitating the dormant modes of nature. The second is when the false ego is generated, which is the source of the three principal creative energies, Dravya, Gyan and Kriya Shaktis. Dravya Shakti is the origin of the material ingredients, Jnana Shakti of material knowledge and Kriya Shakti of material activities. Verse 16. In the third stage of creation, the Tanmatras are created: sound, touch, form, taste, and smell. They are the source of the five gross elements: ether, air, fire, water, and earth. In the fourth stage, the knowledge acquiring and active senses are created. Verse 17. In the fifth stage, the controlling gods and the mind are created from false ego in the mode of goodness. The sixth stage of creation is of the ignorant darkness, which obliges the pure spirit soul to act like a fool. Vidur thought carefully and then realized that Maitreya was referring to the creation of Adhyatma, or the sense of false lordship. He wondered how the pure soul, who is Krishna's eternal servant, could fall under the false impression of being lord of the material energy. There is no position greater than the servant of Supreme Personality of Godhead. To give this up is more unimaginable than an emperor's personal servant becoming a petty criminal. How was it possible? Maitreya explained that Maya functions in three ways: as the creative principle known as Pradhan, as avidya or ignorance, and as vidya or knowledge. It is her avidya potency that befools the living beings. Avidya induces conditioned souls to forget their relationship with the Supreme Lord and thus become overwhelmed by the five kinds of illusion which cause material bondage: attachment, hatred, pride, ignorance, and false identification. Vidur slowly shook his head. How could people be delivered from this illusion? The answer dawned in his heart. When they perform pure devotional acts such as hearing about Krishna from a liberated soul and then repeating those messages, Maya employs her vidya or knowledge, potency by which the conditioned souls again remember their eternal spiritual nature. Vidur looked up at Maitreya with renewed earnestness. Please tell me more. Verse 18, Maitreya said, all the above six stages of creations are executed by Krishna's material energy, Maya, and they are known as the primary or Prakrit creations. Now hear from me about the Vaikrit or secondary creation. For this, the Lord incarnates in the mode of passion as Brahma, who is empowered by the intelligence to create. Verses 19 and 20. In the seventh stage, Brahma creates all the immovable living entities. Vidur asked, how many types of immovable creatures are there? And what other characteristics do they share? Maitreya replied, there are 6 kinds of immovable beings. Trees like the fig which bear fruit without flowers, annual plants which die after bearing fruit, creepers, bamboos, shrubs and trees whose flowers turn into fruit. All of them draw their sustenance from below and distribute their nourishment upwards. Although almost unconscious, they experience slight pain on being cut. There are innumerable varieties. Verses 21 to 25, in the 8th stage, Brahma creates 28 types of lower movable species. They are very dull, detecting their needs by smell, and are incapable of much thought. Included amongst them are 3 categories of creatures which move on legs. These are beasts with cloven hooves such as cows, goats and buffaloes, those with uncloven hooves such as horses, mules and donkeys, and those with 5 nails such as dogs, jackals and tigers. In this 8th stage of creation, Brahma also created birds. Verse 26, in the 9th stage, Brahma created the human species. What are their chief characteristics? Humans store food in their bellies. Furthermore, they are more passionate than other species. In what way? Other animals only have sex during their allotted season. However, humans have sex at any time. What other traits do they have? They are always busy creating misery for themselves, but deluded by Maya, they think themselves happy. Vidur looked intrigued. Surely no one intentionally creates misery for himself. Maitreya replied, of course not. You see, Vidur, humans are gifted with higher intelligence to pursue liberation from material life. However, in ignorance, they misuse their intelligence to improve their material standards and find new ways to eat, sleep, mate, and defend. In so doing, they only compound their miseries. In illusion, however, they think their inventions have made them happier. Vidur had travelled through many cities and seen the truth of Maitreya's observation. He had seen how people complicated their lives, creating so much unnecessary anxiety. Verse 27, Maitreya continued, the 10th creation is the gods. These last 4 are parts of the secondary or Vaikrit creation by Brahma. The appearance of the 4 boys sages, the Kumars, is considered both Prakrit and Vaikrit. I seem to remember that earlier you spoke of the gods as being part of the original Prakrit creation, said Vidur in puzzlement. Maitreya looked pleased. He appreciated how attentively Vidur heard and his ability to recall what had been discussed. Verses 28 to 29 now. Yes, you're right. Those gods mentioned in the primary creation are different from these. They are the personified elements who reside in the universal form and preside over the senses of the living beings. Besides those deities, there are 33 million administrative gods, who in India we call 33 crore Devi Devtas. These were created by Brahma. Other beings in the category of gods were also created by Brahma. These are the Pitris, the demon races, the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Yakshas and Rakshasas, the Siddhas, the Charans and Vidyadhars, the Bhutas, the Pretas, the Pishachas, and the superhuman races like the Kinnars and Kimpurushas. All these beings have exceptional powers. Vidur clasped his hands together. Please tell me more. Now, the last verse of this chapter, chapter 10 of Canto 3. Maitreya smiled. I was answering your questions about time, but you got diverted into speaking about the 10 types of creation. Let me first finish explaining about time. Then I will continue to describe the development of the material creation, beginning with Manu's descendants. The main point we must understand is that Vishnu incarnates as the mode of passion in the form of Brahma. Thus, Vishnu creates the universe by himself, from himself. So, as we heard that the humans, they are created in the 9th stage of the creation by Brahmaji, and there's Vaikrit and Prakrit creations. The 10th creation is of the gods, the administrators of Lord, all the Devi Devtas, the 33 million or the 33 crore administrative gods. So we will continue from chapter 11 next time, which is calculation of time from the atom. Thank you for joining. Hariam Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.